sponsored by Squarespace. This is the OnePlus 7 Pro, and this is the OnePlus 13. At a first glance, you might think that this is just normal evolution, a faster chip, better cameras, and a slightly newer design. But anyone who's followed OnePlus from the beginning, this isn't just another upgrade, it's a complete identity shift. Because when OnePlus launched back in 2014, they weren't trying to be like Samsung or Apple. They weren't about flashy marketing or premium pricing. They were the underdog, the so-called flagship killer. A phone brand that catered to tech enthusiasts, people who cared about speed, clean software, and value. But somewhere along the way, they stopped being that brand. After reaching what many fans, including myself, considered the peak of OnePlus with the OnePlus 7 series, OnePlus slowly started shifting away from the enthusiast crowd that built its reputation and instead moved towards mainstream appeal. Higher prices, heavier software, and a lot of uniqueness stripped away. So today, we're going to be breaking down the rise and fall of OnePlus, how they went from a community-driven innovation to just another player in the premium smartphone race, and more importantly, whether there's any chance they could get that spark back. When OnePlus launched their first phone in 2014, it didn't come with any flashy ad campaign or celebrity endorsement. Instead, it came with an invite system and a promise. You could get flagship level specs for half the price of a Galaxy or iPhone. And for a lot of people, that wasn't just compelling, it was game-changing. The OnePlus One was unapologetically built for enthusiasts. Snapdragon 801 processor, 3GB of RAM, a massive 31 mAh battery, and Cyanogen mod, aka the dream combo for Android nerds who hated bloatware and loved customization. It wasn't just a phone, it was a statement. No unnecessary features, no gimmicks, just raw power, clean software, and a price tag that made the competition look ridiculous. That invite-only system wasn't just about managing supply, it made the phone feel exclusive. You had to earn it or know someone who had it. Combine that with their aggressive online community and edgy marketing, and suddenly, OnePlus wasn't just a new phone company, it was a movement. The slogan was "Never settle," and in the beginning they meant it. Now, if you ask longtime fans when OnePlus was at its best, most of them will point to the OnePlus 3 through OnePlus 7 Pro. Phones that were still affordable, but finally felt premium. No longer just a cheap alternative, but a serious competitor. But before we get into this era of OnePlus, I want to quickly mention today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you're thinking about launching a site, whether it's a blog, portfolio, or online store, Squarespace makes it super easy to get started. There's no coding, no weird templates, you just drag and drop and customize your site to your liking. And then there's the AI-powered blueprint tool. You can just tell it what kind of site you want, and it builds out a full layout for you, with matching content, styling, and sections that actually make sense. It's a huge time saver and makes the whole process feel less overwhelming. And once your site is live, Squarespace doesn't leave you guessing. Their built-in analytics show you what's working, like which pages are getting the most clicks, where your traffic's coming from, and how many people are interacting with your content. Everything you need is already built in, whether you're launching a brand, selling products, or rolling out members-only content. So start your free trial at squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/punkwave to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now then, the OnePlus 3 and 3T kicked it off with fast charging that actually lived up to the hype. Dash charge was miles ahead of anything Apple or Samsung had at the time. Then the OnePlus 5 and 6 kept the movement going. Better cameras, slimmer designs, and specs that match top flagship phones, all while staying under $600. But the real turning point was the OnePlus 7 Pro. This was the phone that made everyone stop and pay attention. It had a notchless 90Hz OLED display with curved edges, a pop-up selfie camera, stereo speakers, and blazing fast performance thanks to Oxygen OS. It was sleek, powerful, and felt like a flagship, but without the flagship price. And most importantly, it still had that enthusiast DNA. Clean software, community-first features, updates that actually listened to user feedback. It was everything people wanted in an Android phone, all without clutter or compromises. And unfortunately, it didn't last. Things started to change with the OnePlus 8. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. The phone looked good and still had fast performance and still had some solid upgrades. But the price? That was the first red flag. Over time, OnePlus was charging more and more for their phones, with the OnePlus 8 starting at $700, basically the same ballpark as Samsung and Google. And just like that, they weren't undercutting the big players anymore. They were trying to become one. The software also started to feel different. Oxygen OS, which used to be one of the cleanest and fastest Android skins out there, slowly started merging with Oppo's Color OS behind the scenes. And even though they promised it would be the best of both worlds, it ended up feeling bloated and less responsive. Updates were noticeably slower, and features felt more like checkboxes than community-driven decisions. And while OnePlus phones were still technically solid, they started losing their identity. The design got flashier, the prices kept going up, and they started to add heavy camera modules, things that looked cool on paper, but didn't really matter to the enthusiast crowd that had built the brand in the first place. At this point, OnePlus wasn't the underdog anymore, but it also wasn't the brand people fell in love with. As a response, they launched the Nord series to try and win back the budget crowd, but even that felt confused. Some Nord models were great value, while others were barely better than entry-level phones. And the naming? Completely inconsistent. Nord, Nord CE, Nord N200, it was hard to tell what any of them were supposed to be. Meanwhile, the main flagship line kept drifting further and further away from what made OnePlus special. Phones like the OnePlus 9 and 10 looked fine, had decent specs, and even partnered with Hasselblad for the cameras, but they just didn't stand out. There was no wow factor, no bold design choices, just another big phone with the same features you could get anywhere else. And even worse, the hardware was becoming a serious downgrade. OnePlus phones that passed durability tests were suddenly breaking in half when bent by human hands, reminiscent of the iPhone 6. Even the software didn't deliver. Software updates became slower and more buggy. Features that once felt intentional now felt tacked on. And the overall experience, just average. Which, for a brand built on not being average, it was a huge letdown. OnePlus used to be the brand you recommended to your tech-savvy friend. Now, it's just another option on the carrier shelf. OnePlus didn't fail in a traditional sense. They still sell phones, still push out flagships every year, and they're still around, but ask any longtime fan, and they'll tell you this isn't the same company anymore. What made OnePlus special wasn't just the specs or pricing, it was the philosophy behind it. A phone brand that actually listened. They built features based on user feedback. They cared about performance and simplicity over flashy gimmicks. That idea, never settle, was more than just a tagline. It actually meant something. But over time, they did settle. For higher prices, for slower software updates, for merging with Oppo and letting go of that lightweight community-driven experience that put them on the map. And that's the part that stings the most. Not that OnePlus phones are bad now, they're actually pretty decent, but they don't stand for anything anymore. They used to have a mission, and now they just have a product line. A lot of former fans have moved on to Pixel, Samsungs, and even to brands like Nothing, which in many ways feels like it's trying to pick up where OnePlus left off. OnePlus didn't completely fall off, but it definitely lost its way. It started as a brand for tech fans who wanted power without the price, and slowly turned into just another premium phone company. They're still around, still making good devices, but the spark, the reason people cared in the first place, is gone. And for a lot of us, that's where OnePlus peaked.